De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.
I love history. Know that? Obviously you do know that. You watch I'm Right every night, I hope, but I love history. But why? It's actually not just the stories, although I do love the stories, the drama and the battles and the glory and the horror and the greatness. And it's not just that. I love history because I'm trying to figure out where we're going. I'm trying to figure out the future. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is to come. And there's a reason, as we're about to talk about our economy and the problems we're having, there's a reason I tell you so often that we're in the looting the treasury phase of our republic. We are a late stage republic. Why do I say that? Well, one of the most obvious ways you can see is the people who lead the nation. They don't care about the country at all. They don't care about your dollar. They don't care that the value of your dollar is in free fall. These things don't bother them the way they bother you. You wake up in the morning and you look at your bank account or the stock market and you think, oh, I just lost all this value. Honey, what do we do? And you're looking at the economy and gas prices and you're trying to buy eggs. And then you're looking at the state of the nation and it saddens you. It saddens me because we're looking at the country and it's coming apart on us. The debt's really bad and all these things are happening. But the reason we are a late stage republic isn't that things are bad. Things get bad sometimes. We're a late stage republic because the people leading the country don't care. Not even a little. Many of them are actually happy about it. Let's just deal with the inflation portion of it that we're having to tackle. 20%. The value of your dollar, I don't care what metrics they try to give out and lie to you about, the value of your dollar is 20% less than it was when Joe Biden took office right now. How upset are they about that? Because that's significant. Normal people can't just withstand a 20% decrease in their value. Normal people need their money. They need to purchase goods and services to survive. They need these things. How concerned is our leadership? I think everything's going great.
The good news is that inflation in America is continuing to come down. Today, I'm happy to report that the State of the Union and the state of our economy is strong.
The United States is doing extremely well economically with inflation coming down and a strong labor market.
We take pride in the credibility of the forecasts that we make.
Take pride in the credibility of the forecasts they make. So while you have had your income, your worth reduced by 20%, these people are telling you everything's fine, and they're telling you how proud they are of the forecasts they make, except this was one of the forecasts they made.
I really doubt that we're going to see an inflationary cycle.
Is there a risk of inflation? I think there's a small risk, and I think it's manageable.
I don't anticipate that inflation is going to be a problem, but it is something that we're watching very carefully.
I don't anticipate inflation's going to be a problem. Let's just pause on that for a moment here, because we're doing our late stage republic talk. I don't anticipate inflation's going to be a problem. Now, I'm glad you like the show. I'm glad you watch I'm Right. I'm glad you enjoyed. Hopefully we all learned something together. Hopefully we have some laughs, speak some hard truths, but you know I'm an idiot, right? And I knew we were going to have inflation. I don't even have a college education. I went to community college, and I knew we were going to have inflation badly and predicted so. Why? Because even an idiot like me knows you can't just stop your economy and then print $5, $6, $7 trillion in unbacked currency without inflation. And yet the people who run the country told you we weren't going to have it. And then once it got here, they said we're all doing just fine. That's late stage republic stuff. Late stage republic stuff. And let's not forget that what they're predicting now, even with all these bank closures from First Republic to Signature to Silicon Valley, even with all these things, a prediction they're making now is that the banking system is just fine.
The American banking system is really safe and well capitalized. It's resilient.
Safe and well capitalized, huh? Let's talk about the banking system. Because of what I do, and I have to travel a bit, and you go to events, and you got to meet corporate suits and do that kind of thing, I've gotten to know many, many people over the years, running for Congress and whatnot. I've gotten to know bankers, finance guys. One of my good friends owns a bunch of banks here in Texas. Always good to have a friend like that, but he is a wonderful human being, wonderful family. He owns banks. Okay, so this is a man who is not only well off, he understands what's going on with the financial sector, which he understands what's going on with the dollar right now. Do you know what text message he sent me 3 weeks ago, a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago? You know what he sent me? Hey, Jesse, I'm going to buy a lot of gold. Where should I go? I'm not making that up. Where should I get gold? I said, I don't want to give out his name. I said, we'll just call him Bill. I said, Bill, do you know something I don't? I love people buying gold. I encourage people to do this all the time. But from a banker, I would assume a banker would go a different route. He said, yeah, I know a lot you don't. I'm buying a lot of gold. You know what China's doing right now? China's buying gold. Bankers are buying gold. China's buying gold. What's America doing? Oh, we're taking the money we have that's worth virtually nothing and we're spending it on climate change.
The Inflation Reduction Act is, at its core, about turning the climate crisis into an economic opportunity.
To rebuild our infrastructure and create better jobs, to invest in our workforce, to advance racial equity and make sure the economic recovery includes everyone, to address the climate crisis.
Smart people are buying gold. Countries that want to continue to exist are buying gold. We're investing in climate change and racial equity right now. Scary late-stage republic talk. That's what that is. Late-stage republic talk. We are in the looting the treasury phase where these people are destroying us. They're not going to stop. They're not going to slow down. They're going to continue to loot the treasury, enrich themselves while they burn our money and our nation to the ground. And the problem is there's virtually no stopping it. And we haven't even mentioned, speaking of China, moving off of the dollar. Let me explain something. We've gotten used to something in this country. You have, I have, we all have. No matter your age, no matter if you're 9 or 90, watching this show right now, we've all gotten used to something, and this is what we've gotten used to. We've gotten used to the American government racking up debt, huge numbers of debt. We're used to it by now. We don't even balk anymore. $500 billion deficit this year, $1 trillion deficit this year, $1.5 trillion, and we're just kind of used to that being how life works. So of course we spend more than we take in, of course, but I just want to explain something to you right now. The only reason that flies, the only reason we've been allowed by the world to amass $31 trillion in debt, the only reason we've been allowed to spend more than we take in is because the dollar has been thought of as being so strong that it would be the world's reserve currency. Reserve currency. That means when this nation trades with that nation, not even us, when France trades with Saudi Arabia, what currency do they use? The French one, the Saudi Arabian? No, they use the dollar. That has allowed us the freedom to spend way more than we take in. That's going away. The world's tired of it. The world's tired of watching us destroy the value of the thing they use for the reserve currency. It's called BRICS. There's an alliance of nations. They're already moving off of the dollar. And when that day comes, not if, when that day comes, you will see a shocking, drastic reduction in your standard of living like you can't even possibly comprehend. Now, that's all the bad news. The good news is there are things you can do and should be doing to protect yourself. Again, I like history. History tells me the future. What had value 500 years ago? Precious metals, gold, silver. And listen, when I tell you to buy gold and silver, I need to clarify, I don't care about gold and silver. I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I don't. I don't care about the shininess of it. I'm not a jewelry guy. I don't have necklaces and things. I just don't. I got a wedding band and a watch my dad gave me. That's what I've got. I don't care that it's shiny. I don't care that it's expensive. I love precious metals just because they're reliable, because they last, because they've had value 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Precious metals had value. And so that tells me no matter what the future brings for America, for the world, gold and silver 5,000 years from now will have incredible value. Get some precious metals in your hands to protect yourself from the tsunami that is coming. Gold coins or silver coins. I don't care. Again, I don't have a preference because I don't care about them. All I see is wealth. I see protection. That's what I see. Get them in your 401k. Get them in your IRA. This is how we will protect ourselves because there's nothing else we can do to stop these pieces of trash from wrecking this country. Gold and silver in your hands. And if you want to know where to do that, I'll tell you where I sent my buddy, my banker friend. I sent him to Oxford Gold. They handle all that for me. 401k, IRA, they get the gold, silver in there. You want physical gold, and you do. They'll take care of that. They're also not freaking used car salesmen. I got to buy today. I hate that crap. They're super laid back. I love these guys. Tell them I told you to call. Call Oxford Gold. 833-995-GOLD, all right? 833-995-GOLD. All you can do is protect yourself. We got a great show for you. We'll be back.
You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group. You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.
I do continue to believe that there's a path to a soft or a softish landing. I do believe that. And
the definition of a softish landing is what? Unemployment goes up a little, but we don't have a recession?
Yeah, unemployment goes up, but it's not a hard landing. It's not a severe recession.
Well, that's good news, except it's Jerome Powell, and he's an idiot, so I'd rather hear that from John Carney. Joining me now, my friend John Carney of Breitbart. John, okay, a soft landing. Is it possible? Are we going to have a soft landing?
I don't think it is possible. I think that what we're seeing is, I know it's terrible news. I'd like to tell you, yeah, everything will be fine, Jesse. Don't worry about it. Unfortunately, that's what a communist would do. You just make up what the economics is going to be and don't pay attention to reality. But the problem is inflation is stubbornly high. And the Fed, when it talks about a soft landing, is saying that it thinks it can squeeze out the inflation that it let get out of control without really damaging the economy. Now, that would have been possible if they had acted earlier and in time. Unfortunately, they let inflation get out of control, and they probably are going to have to squeeze the economy so much that we end up with what people are calling a hard landing, which means unemployment goes up a lot, and we probably have to have what eventually gets declared a real recession.
Okay, squeeze the economy so hard. That's interest rates going up. That's what you're describing?
That's right. Interest rates are going to have to go up. They've already gone up by 500 basis points, so 5 percentage points. And they're going to have to go up further. And the Fed people have been communicating this. They're looking at what's going on in the economy. They're saying, maybe we'll take a break, but we're going to have to go higher. I think they end up really going a whole nother percentage point at least, so that we end up above 6%. That puts me on the high side. Most economists, I'll say, and the Fed people don't agree with me on that. They think we go to 5.25 or 5.5. I think we're above 6% before this is all done.
Good grief. Okay. Now, I don't love to do a bunch of revisionist history, but I'm asking this question just because I'm curious. You say they screwed it up. What a shock. I think everyone figured that much. Could someone who actually knows what they're doing, like you, could you have maybe landed us softly? I just don't understand how that's possible when you print that much, but I'm not an economist. You are. Could someone smart have landed us softly?
So, Yes, I do think that if they had acted early on, when we had things like the vaccines and the reopening of the economy and people allowed out of their house without a mask on, the economy was doing better. So a better managed economy would not have done the American Rescue Act, which pumped another $1.9 trillion of stimulus into the economy, and you would have started to raise rates above the zero level they had been at earlier on. That would have kept inflation from getting up out of control as it did last summer, and it would have been easier to bring it down back towards 2%. Unfortunately, once inflation gets very high, it starts to spread throughout the economy and becomes harder to bring down. So I do think, and this isn't just revisionist history, I was critical of them saying inflation was just going to be transitory and go away while it was happening. And I was critical of the American Rescue Act as well. I thought they shouldn't have spent that much money and the Fed needed to act earlier. And it wasn't just me, of course. There were other, including liberal economists, who said this is going to cause too much inflation. If they hadn't let it get out of control, we wouldn't be in the position where we're probably going to have not a severe recession, but not a tiny little light one that you barely notice.
Tell me about the jobs market. What's the labor market right now?
It's very strong. And this is one of the things that has the Fed concerned about, because frankly, the ratio of unemployed people to vacancies has gone back up to close to 1.8% for a vacancy for every unemployed person. And that really can drive inflation, because what it means is employers have to bid up to hire people. Those people aren't necessarily more productive, so you're not getting more out of the economy, but you're having wages go up. That means people have more they can spend on goods and services. And when they have more they can spend on goods and services, that pushes up prices. So this tight labor market is probably going to push inflation higher, which means that the Fed has to act harder. We just got 10.1 million was the number of job openings. We haven't had that many since January. A lot of people thought it was on a trajectory downhill. It's not. It looks like it's climbing again. And so I think we're going to continue to see this high pressure in the labor market.
Okay, help me understand then why exactly would why would you hire anybody at all if they're facing this market? I mean, hiring additional people, because I hear about these major corporations, Microsoft, Amazon, laying off thousands. Are corporations doing hiring right now?
So no, they are hiring. We're going to find out exactly how much they're hiring soon. One of the things I would say is that they are hiring. Those layoffs came from a sector, the tech sector, Silicon Valley, that really went crazy with hiring during the pandemic. They saw demand for their online services explode higher, and instead of just saying, okay, yeah, people are stuck at home, and so, of course we got more business. They sort of thought that trend would continue. And so they overhired. So we've seen them shrink. But frankly, that's a tiny sector of the economy. It is not, just like people say, like Wall Street, it's not the economy. Silicon Valley is not the economy. And what we're seeing is a lot of businesses, particularly retail, particularly leisure and hospitality businesses, hiring a lot of people. And even construction is now bouncing back. So we're seeing a lot of people get hired into building homes, believe it or not, building offices and building roads and highways. So we're not seeing large layoffs throughout the economy at all. We're seeing it in a small sector of the economy. And so until that gets bigger, or at least until hiring slows down a lot, we're not going to see much relief from inflation.
Building offices, half the office buildings in New York City are empty. Why are they building offices?
Right. Well, so one of the things that's going to happen is I think we're going to start to see, we're going to start to see some sort of ex-urban office construction. People don't want to go into the center cities anymore, but there is still a demand for people, maybe new kinds of workspaces. So instead of, an office where everybody gets a desk or everybody gets their own separate cubicle, maybe you build things that are actually custom built for people who come in 2 or 3 days a week, rather than 5 days a week like we used to have.
John Carney, you are the best, brother. I appreciate it. Come back soon. All right, we're not done. We have a panel. Well, this central currency, this digital currency they talk to us so much about, they're always bringing it up now. We need a CBDC. I'm pretty sure that's I think that's the abbreviation. What is it? Why should we care? Why should we worry about it at all? Let's ask our panel next.
You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group. You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.
Sometimes government will do things where they provide kind of a benevolent rationale for what they're doing, but it's really nothing more than a wolf in sheep's clothing. Well, I think with central bank digital currency, this is a wolf coming as a wolf. This is something that will be a massive transfer of power from individual consumers to a central authority.
Why? What's the problem? What is this central currency? What's the issue with it? I don't understand. But my guests do. Joining me now, Christopher Alexander, CCO of Liberty Blockchain, and Carrie Sheffield, Senior Fellow with the Independent Women's Forum, which I love. Okay, Christopher, let's start with you. This central digital currency, I don't understand. Why is it digital? Why is it central? What is this thing? It sounds lovely.
So the great thing about the blockchain is transparency. You can see where money moves, despite what Elizabeth Warren wants you to believe. And it's very easy to find something. It's very easy to claw it back, for example. And so the CBDC just has this enormous potential to create a massive surveillance state because of that very transparency of the blockchain. There are already in the USDC coin, which is backed by Circle, and I believe 40 billion US dollars, alternatives that work in the market. And the United States government's just sort of elbowing its way in because it's an amazing way to be able to collect any taxes they feel you owe or fine you anything they feel like and just immediately pull it out of a digital wallet without you having any agency to stop it.
Okay, Carrie, that sounds horrific. The government controlling all the money, taking whatever they need, tracking whatever, deciding how much red meat you can buy. But how are they going to sell it to the American people? I have a very hard time believing they're going to sell it the way Christopher just sold it. They're going to try to make it sound nice somehow. How?
Of course. I mean, that's Ronald Reagan's adage that I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you. So the way they're going to package it up or attempt to is to say this is to help folks who have been left out of the market, that there are millions of people, I think between 8 to 9, maybe 10 million people who are unbanked, who for whatever reason, quite often they either don't have enough minimum balance or they have skepticism. They don't participate in the banking system. And so, and they tend to be poor people. They tend to be disproportionately people of color. So their argument, from the socialist standpoint is to say, well, we want to get these vulnerable people into the banking system. And of course, the solution is more government. So that's the nose in the camel's tent as how they want to approach it. And we're already starting to see that when it comes to the way that the federal government and some state governments have been trying to go after alternatives when it comes to things like, they call them payday loans to be derogatory about it, but they're called installment loans. And Thomas Sowell has shown how these installment loans actually help people significantly who otherwise wouldn't be able to have access to the capital markets. The federal government wants to shut down private capital markets like installment lending, and they want to supplant it with these types of, basically government-run checking and saving and financial accounts. And I will say one last thing. Avik Roy, who, he does great work at the Foundation for the Economic and Research on Equal Opportunity. He's looked at, this isn't happening in a vacuum in terms of the carbon copy that the U.S. is trying to copy. China's already doing this. They have it. It's called the ECNY. It enables the government to directly send money and take money from people who they favor and disfavor. So it's chilling that the U.S. government is styling itself after the CCP banking system.
No, what a shock. Christopher, what's the deal? What's the difference between something like blockchain and all this stuff, because people, especially older people, my dad doesn't know what blockchain means. He has no idea what that word means. He thinks it's a chain that holds the dog in the yard. What is blockchain?
Sure. So simply put, blockchain is a new form of internet. And it's a new form of internet where it's distributed on people's computers. And so the functions that you would have on the internet, whether it's an app or storing data or processing power, if that is on your computer, that part of the internet, it's installed through what's called a node. Not to get more technical, you get a reward for your computer being used. So think of blockchain simply this way. If you can timeshare your home, you can timeshare your computer, and you get a reward. In this case, a block is formed on the blockchain, and you get a digital reward. Depending on what it is, that's Bitcoin or Ethereum or what have you. You can then move that money around through exchanges. So think of Web 1, you broadcast to everyone. Web 2, you could talk to each other, but the price was your personal data. The idea is to build Web 3 through the blockchain where everything's encrypted, it's transparent, but you own your data and it's protected.
Carrie, what's BRICS and why should I care about it? Why should I worry about it?
Well, the BRICS, and you've got the flags there, I see. It was a term that was coined by folks at Goldman Sachs, and I must say I'm a recovering Goldman Sachs analyst myself, but you've got Brazil, Russia, China, and the fact that these countries are, back in the day, so this was, in South Africa, sorry, the fact that the BRICS, so this term was coined, or was sort of at its peak around like 2010, it was supposed to be the countries that were going to be the next forefront of the global economy. And they were going to be these roaring success stories that were going to eventually surpass and eclipse the United States and the West more broadly. They were going to be the tigers and the bears, whatever analogy you want to use for their national mascots. But what's been so interesting now, looking back, 15, 16 years later, there is not this. I mean, Brazil has had all sorts of problems. Obviously, we see what's happening with Russia, and China has taken a deeply sinister turn. India is, it is a democracy. However, its economy is just really beleaguered, and it has a lot of structural problems, a lot of nepotism, a lot of problems with its caste system, which Vivek Ramaswamy does a great job of contrasting the Indian system with the American free enterprise system as it relates to the caste system. So the BRICS, there was all these prophecies of the BRICS being the new global hegemons, hasn't really happened.
Christopher, is gold something that people should, whatever, gold, silver, I don't really care what color it is. Is it something people should be buying to protect themselves right now with all these morons who run things in this country?
I mean, I think it's a very safe alternative, and with BRICS, the issue is perhaps they don't have the will, the resources to build this alternative to the dollar now. But it's something I think of a warning shot across the bow to the U.S. and its economic allies in the world that people are looking to build an alternative. They were pretty rattled with the aggressiveness by which the U.S. brought sanctions against Russia. They've tired of what they view as being bullied by the U.S. And either the U.S. makes diplomatic changes or economic changes with these partners, or you do face a risk. And if you face a risk, where else are you going to go? If you look at cryptocurrency, it's very volatile. The fact is that gold has stood the test of time and certainly makes sense as a kind of a long-range, long-term kind of safety.
Yeah, hard to argue with time. Thank you both. I appreciate you. Come back soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Peter St. Onge joins us next to elaborate more on these things. Don't forget, get some precious metals in your physical possession. I've already told you about your 401k and IRA. That's a no-brainer. Don't wake up one day and see everything you've worked hard for gone in the market. But physical gold, it's harder to convince people why they need it. Why do you need gold coins and silver coins? That doesn't make any sense. Well, how do you know you're not going to need it? And maybe more importantly, let's say, Lord willing, you get through your life without ever needing it. How do you know your kids won't need it? What a thing to pass down to your children, their children after them. Someone in your legacy is going to need it to survive. 833-995-GOLD. Oxford makes that super easy. Just mail it to your front door. It's cake. 833-995-GOLD. Not just your 401k and IRA. Get it in your physical possession. Again, I don't care what kind. Gold, silver, I don't care. You choose. Pick the color you like. But get it in your hands. 833-995-GOLD. We'll be back.
You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold. Brought to you by Oxford Gold Group. You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold. Brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.
Inflation is made in Washington because only Washington can create money. And any other attribution to other groups of inflation is wrong. Consumers don't produce it. Producers don't produce it. The trade unions don't produce it. Foreign sheiks don't produce it. Oil imports don't produce it. What produces it is too much government spending and too much government creation of money and nothing else.
We used to have people talk like that in this country. I miss those days. Joining me now, Peter St. Onge, economist, research fellow, Heritage Foundation. Peter, it's amazing to me that you see these people like Janet Yellen get up there, and obviously I'm not a Janet Yellen fan, but she got 18,000 degrees from all the fanciest universities, and inflation just shocked her, Peter, just stunned her. Now, I'm a moron. I watched us print $5 trillion in the course of about a year. I knew inflation was coming, and yet it stuns all the smartest people in our society. What a bunch of liars.
Yeah, and it is absolutely lies. You know, there was just a paper by Bernanke and Blanchard just a couple of weeks ago that was going through this. It's an entire exercise where they scapegoat everything on earth to try to pin this inflation on, instead of accepting what everybody's known for centuries, which is that inflation is caused when you print money. That is the only cause of it. The rest of it is, really excuses. And, they played this exact same game in the 1970s. When inflation was taking off in the 70s, they had this whole song and dance. They were blaming, of course, the Middle East, right, with the oil embargo. That's what jumped the prices up initially. But that was not the cause of 10 years of inflation, all right, because the inflation was in double digits. Even when oil started coming back down, they were looking for everything they could think of. They were on about we're running out of stuff. We have overpopulation. It's like these guys sit here and troll through the newspaper, and any excuse they can possibly find, they put that on their list instead of telling the truth, which is that in the 1970s and today, this inflation is caused by too much money printing. The main reason for the money printing is to fund government deficits.
I don't think people understand that there's an end to this. And as much as I try to explain this to people, it's hard because we haven't ever run into a problem where the debt broke us as a nation. But that's as inevitable as gravity. And so they just keep doing it. Both parties just keep doing it, just keep racking up $1 trillion deficit here and $1 trillion deficit there. It's crazy that it's an addiction. And more than that, the voters don't care. The voters don't vote on spending. They never have, they never will.
Yeah, voters don't treat the money as if it's real. I mean, it's funny when you get down to it, right? We're looking at 31 trillion in debt. Now Kevin McCarthy has just green-lighted it towards 35, 36 trillion. And that comes out to about $300,000 per American who pays income tax. All right, so forget your mortgage. All right, you owe an additional $300,000 in debt. And voters don't treat it like that. When we saw this with the student loans last year that Joe Biden was going to forgive them all. Well, those student loans, that's one of the main assets that the U.S. government has, is those loans, which means that they belong to you, the debt, you, the citizen. That was your money. And yet most Americans, they said, oh, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Like it never occurred to them that whatever it was, 600 billion, $1 trillion, that was your money. And that's part of what our system does now, is that it hides from voters the fact that all that debt, someday you are going to have to pay that off. If you don't pay it off, then, it won't be 300, it'll be 500 for your kids to pay off. Maybe it'll be 700 for your grandkids to pay off. It hides all of this so that voters, you almost feel like you're crying wolf, where voters don't think the debt is real. They don't act like it's real. They don't vote like it's real for sure. And the reason is that we haven't hit a crisis yet. And, several times through history, at least twice, the country has been consumed by hyperinflationary collapse right after the revolution with the Continentals and then the greenbacks under Lincoln. So, this is not science fiction. It was headed off twice by FDR and Nixon effectively defaulting on the dollar by defaulting on gold. So they transformed the dollar from an actual real asset representing a certain amount of gold into just random tokens. And so that sort of, kept the wolf away from the door for a minute, this partial default. But the bottom line is that, whatever can't go on forever will stop. And you cannot keep printing forever, because at some point, people who in theory would buy all of those government bonds, they start thinking, well, maybe I should believe voters. Maybe voters don't think this is real because they have no intention of paying it off. Look, if the U.S. government woke up tomorrow and announced that it was not going to pay debt, who's going to make us? That's that. You issue brand new debt for the widows and orphans, and you cover Social Security and the pensions, and the rest of them, the Chinese, Wall Street, the rest of them, you just cut them off. You say, hey, too bad. You guys screwed up. You shouldn't have believed us.
Okay, let's talk about backed by gold, because you brought that up. People don't realize that currency is supposed to have something backing it. That's how it's supposed to work. It's not just supposed to be a paper that you just print off. But what do you mean backed by gold? What's that mean?
Yeah, so traditionally, and especially the U.S. dollar, so the U.S. dollar represented about 1/20th of an ounce of gold. Okay, and that, you had what's called gold clauses in contracts. Almost every contract in America up until FDR, it had a clause in it saying that if, the person who had the debt, if they wanted, they could be paid in gold at the present value, okay, meaning 1/20th of an ounce. So, of course, today gold is worth, $2,000 per ounce, right? So that would translate into a 99% devaluation. But, gold for hundreds of years and through, the first, 150 years of this republic, gold was another way of saying, or rather the dollar was another way of saying gold. Like a dollar was defined as 1/20th of an ounce of gold. Now, FDR swooped in and he changed that just unilaterally. He changed that, by about 40%, and he outlawed Americans holding gold, which was quite shocking at the time. That went all the way to the Supreme Court, which only greenlighted it because FDR was threatening to pack that court. Okay, so FDR devalued it massively. And then, of course, by the time we got to Nixon just woke up one morning and said, you know what, forget about it. It's not backed by anything. Which, by the way, he came on TV, he said temporarily. So that's always how this works, right? That was, 52 years ago now. So that's temporarily for you. And always that's how they do it, because when they first announced that they're going to do something that outrageous, right, that they're literally going to default on the dollar, right, which had been defined as gold for, at that point, over 200 years, they always say, no, we're just going to do this for a minute because, times are tough. And as soon as we get past this crisis, we'll go right back to what we had always promised. That's how government rolls.
Good grief. All right, Peter, finally, what's a debt crisis look like? Everyone has their own predictions. No one actually knows. All we can do is guess what it looks like when that bill comes due. What's the Peter St. Onge vision of how this horror show is going to come about?
It keeps going until countries start defaulting. Just about 12 years ago, Greece defaulted on its loans. And the thing to remember here is that countries don't default because they have to. Okay, they don't default because they ran out of money and literally don't have any more money. They default because at some point voters decide to. Okay, that's what happened in Greece. What will start happening is every country in the world right now is taking on enormous amounts of debt. What will happen is that one by one, voters in different countries will say, you know what? I don't want that $300,000 in debt, and you can't make me pay it. So no, let's just walk away from it. And that'll start with, kind of borderline countries like Argentina. It'll move on to, countries that are sort of more and more, have stronger brand names, places like Italy or Spain. They can at the moment, but, sort of quasi-developed countries. And as it escalates, more and more voters get the idea it's kind of contagious. And, if we look back through history, when countries start defaulting, when one or two go, you get bigger and bigger countries, like sort of a domino effect. And eventually all countries go along with it because all voters look at that. They say, wait a minute, I can just throw away this $300,000 debt. Sounds great to me. At that point, the gig is up for the government. They certainly can't run any more deficits. They'd actually have to live within their means. Realistically, what would happen at that point is that it's to the money printers, right? They would no longer be able to sell debt. They would actually have to print up all the money they need. And then, we could look at double-digit or higher inflation with really no end in sight to that.
Oh. Well, on that sunny note, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it, sir.
Always sunny, absolutely. The Republic has been through worse. That's the thing to remember.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Okay, yep.
All right, we got some final thoughts next.
You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group. You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.
What can we do? That's always the question I ask. It's a question you ask. You email it to me. I ask the same thing. Okay, what do I do? Because we talk all the time about all this bad news. This is bad, and that's bad, and that's bad. Okay, well, what am I doing about it besides just stressing me out? The plan is not to stress you out when we talk about our economic situation. I know it's stressful. We have to be honest about our situation. But the plan is figure out a way to protect yourself. That's all. That's all. This special has been presented by Oxford Gold for a reason. I want you to take steps to protect yourself. Protect yourself. Your retirement, just in your physical possession, protect yourself, all right? Make a phone call. 833-995-GOLD. We will do it again.
You're watching De-dollarization, the case for gold, brought to you by Oxford Gold Group.